Welcome to Bible in a Year with Scott Purcell. I'm so glad you're joining me. This is a daily reading of portions of the Bible, following a plan that will include the entire Bible in a year. And now, let's open the book and begin our readings. This is the reading for day 148. If your reading is aligned with the calendar year in a non-leap year, this is for May 28th, or in a leap year for May 27th. The Old Testament reading is from 1 Samuel 21, 22, and 23. 1 Samuel 21. Now David came to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech came trembling to meet David. And he said to him, Why are you alone, and there are no men with you? So David said to Ahimelech the priest, The king charged me with a matter and said to me, No one must know anything about this matter on which I'm sending you, with which I have charged you and the servants. So I have arranged to meet with my servants at a certain place. Now then, what do you have at hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever is here. The priest answered David and said, There is no ordinary bread here at hand, there is only holy bread, but only if the young men have kept themselves from women. David answered the priest and said to him, Indeed, women were held back from us, as it has been when I've gone out before. And the things of the young men are holy when it is an ordinary journey. How much more today will the things be holy? So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there except the bread of the presence, which was removed from before Yahweh, in order to set hot bread there on the day when it was taken away. Now there was a man from the servants of Saul on that day detained before Yahweh, whose name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's shepherds. David asked Ahimelech, Is there not at your disposal a spear or a sword? For I took neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's matter was urgent. So the priest said, The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want to take it for yourself, then take it, for there is no other except it here. And David said, There is none like it. Give it to me. So David got up and fled on that day from the presence of Saul, and he came to Achish the king of Gath. The servants of Achish said to him, Is not this David the king of the land? Is it not for this one that they sang in the dances, saying, Saul killed his thousands, but David his 10,000s? David took these words seriously, and felt severely threatened by Achish the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them and pretended to be mad in their presence. He made scratches on the doors of the gate, and let his saliva run down into his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, Look, you see a madman. Why did you bring him to me? Do I lack madmen that you have brought this one to act like a madman before me? Should this one enter my household? 1 Samuel 22. David went from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and all his father's household heard, they came down to him there. Every man in distress, and every man who had a creditor, and every embittered man gathered to him, and he became their commander. Now there were about 400 men with him. And David went up from there to Mizpah of Moab. He said to the king of Moab, Please let my father and my mother stay with you until I know what God will do for me. So he brought them before the king of Moab, and they stayed with him all the days David was in the stronghold. Then Gad the prophet said to David, You should not stay in the stronghold. Leave and go into the land of Judah. So David left and came to the forest of Hereth. Now Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been located. Saul was sitting at Gibeah under the tamarisk tree at Ramah. Now his spear was in his hand, and all his servants were stationed around him. Then Saul said to the servants who were standing around him, Please listen, Benjaminites. Will the son of Jesse give you all fields and vineyards? Will he make all of you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? For all of you have conspired against me, and no one discloses to me the making of an agreement between my son and the son of Jesse. None of you have had sympathy for me, or disclosed to me that my son commissioned my servant against me to ambush me, as has been done this day. But Doeg the Edomite, who was stationed among the servants of Saul, answered and said, I saw the son of Jesse going to Nob, to Ahimelech the son of Ahitub. And he inquired of Yahweh for him, and gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. So the king sent to summon Ahimelech the son of Ahitub the priest, and all his father's household, the priests who were at Nob. So all of them came to the king. Saul said, Listen, please, son of Ahitub. He said, Here I am, my lord. Then Saul said to him, Why did you conspire against me, you and the son of Jesse, when you gave to him bread and a sword, and by inquiring of God for him, so that he might arise against me to ambush me, as has been done this day? But Ahimelech answered the king and said, And who among all your servants is as faithful as David? He is the son-in-law of the king, who moves quickly to safeguard you, and is honored in your house. Only today I began to inquire of God for him. Far be it from me that the king should impute anything against his servant, or against my father's household, for your servant has not known any of this matter, little or much. Then the king said, You must certainly die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's household. So the king said to the runners who were stationed around him, Turn and kill the priests of Yahweh, because they also support David, and because they knew that he was fleeing and did not disclose it to me. But the servants of the king were not willing to raise their hand to attack the priests of Yahweh. Then the king said to Doeg, You turn and attack the priest. So Doeg the Edomite turned and attacked the priest himself, and on that day he killed 85 men who wore the linen ephod. And he put to the sword Nob, the city of the priest, from man to woman, from child to infant, and ox and donkey and sheep, all to the sword. But one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, whose name was Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priest of Yahweh. Then David said to Abiathar, I knew on that day that Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would certainly tell Saul, I am responsible for the deaths of all your father's household. Stay with me. Do not fear, because he who seeks my life seeks your life. You are in good care with me. 1 Samuel 23. Now they told David, Look, the Philistines are fighting in Keilah, and they are raiding the threshing floors. So David inquired of Yahweh, saying, Shall I go and attack these Philistines? And Yahweh said to David, Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah. But David's men said to him, Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more if we go to Keilah, to the battle lines of the Philistines? So David again inquired of Yahweh, and Yahweh answered him and said, Get up, go down to Keilah, for I am giving the Philistines into your hand. So David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines. They drove off their livestock and dealt them a heavy blow. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. Now when Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, fled to David at Keilah, he went down with an ephod in his hand. When it was told to Saul that David had gone to Keilah, Saul said, God has given him into my hand, because he has shut himself in by going into a city with 2 barred gates. Saul then summoned all of the army for the battle, to go down to Keilah to lay a siege against David and his men. When David learned that Saul was plotting evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, "Bring the ephod here." And David said, "O Yahweh, God of Israel, your servant has clearly heard that Saul is seeking to come to Keilah to destroy the city because of me. Will the rulers of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down, as your servant has heard? O Yahweh, God of Israel, please tell your servant." And Yahweh said, "He will come down." Then David said, "Will the rulers of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hand of Saul?" And Yahweh said, "They will deliver you." So David and his men got up, about 600 men, and went out from Keilah and wandered wherever they could go. When it was told to Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, he stopped his pursuit. David remained in the wilderness, in the strongholds, and in the hill country in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul sought him continually, but God did not give him into his hand. When David realized that Saul had gone out to seek his life, David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horesh. So Jonathan, the son of Saul, got up and went to David at Horesh and encouraged him through God. He said to him, "Do not be afraid, for the hand of my father Saul will not find you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you. My father Saul knows this also." Then the two of them made a covenant before Yahweh. David remained at Horesh, and Jonathan went to his house. Then the Ziphites went up to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is not David hiding among us in the strongholds at Horesh, on the hill of Hakilah, which is south of Jeshimon? So then, O king, whenever you want to come down, and it will be for us to deliver him into the hand of the king." And Saul said to them, "May you be blessed by Yahweh, for you have shown me compassion. Go, please, make certain again. Find out and see exactly where he is and who has seen him there. For they have said to me, 'He is very cunning.' Look, find out all of the hiding places where he hides, then return to me with dependable information, and I will go with you. And then, if he is there in the land, then I will seek him among all the thousands of Judah." Then they got up and went to Ziph before Saul. Now David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon in the Arabah to the south of Jeshimon. And Saul and his men went to seek him, and they told David. So he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. When Saul heard this, he pursued David into the wilderness of Maon. Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men went on the other side of the mountain. David was hurrying to get away from Saul, while Saul and his men were closing in on David and his men to capture them. But a messenger came to Saul, saying, "Hurry and come, because the Philistines have made a raid on the land." So Saul returned from pursuing David, and he went to confront the Philistines. Therefore they call that place the Rock of Division. David went up from there and stayed in the strongholds of En-gedi. The New Testament reading is from John 18, verses 1 through 24. When Jesus had said these things, he went out with his disciples to the other side of the ravine of the Kidron, where there was a garden into which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, the one who betrayed him, also knew about the place, because Jesus often gathered there with his disciples. So Judas, taking the cohort and officers from the chief priest and from the Pharisees, came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, because he knew all the things that were coming upon him, went out and said to them, "Who are you looking for?" They replied to him, "Jesus the Nazarene." He said to them, "I am he." Now Judas, the one who betrayed him, was also standing with them. So when he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Then he asked them again, "Who are you looking for?" And they said, "Jesus the Nazarene." Jesus replied, "I said to you that I am he. So if you are looking for me, let these men go."
in order that the word that he had spoken would be fulfilled. Those whom you have given to me, I have not lost any one of them. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, and cut off his right ear. Now the name of the slave was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, "Put the sword into its sheath. The cup that the Father has given me, shall I not drink it?" Then the cohort and the military tribune and the officers of the Jews seized Jesus and tied him up and brought him to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Now it was Caiaphas who had advised the Jews that it was better that one man die for the people. So Simon Peter and another disciple followed Jesus. Now that disciple was known to the high priest and entered with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter was standing by the door outside. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the doorkeeper and brought Peter in. Then the female slave, who was the doorkeeper, said to Peter, "You are not also one of the disciples of this man, are you?" He said, "I am not." Now the slaves and the officers were standing there, having made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were warming themselves. And Peter was also standing there with them and warming himself. So the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. Jesus replied to him, "I have spoken openly to the world. I always taught in the synagogue and in the temple courts where all the Jews assemble, and I have said nothing in secret. Why are you asking me? Ask those who heard what I have said to them. Behold, these people know what I said." Now, when he said these things, one of the officers who was standing by gave a slap in the face to Jesus, saying, "Do you reply to the high priest in this way?" Jesus replied to him, "If I have spoken wrongly, testify about what is wrong. But if I have spoken correctly, why do you strike me?" Then Annas sent him tied up to Caiaphas the high priest. The wisdom literature reading is from Proverbs 13, verses 10 through 19. Proverbs 13:10. Only by insolence is strife set up, and wisdom is with those who take advice. Wealth gained from haste will dwindle, but he who gathers little by little will increase it. Hope that is deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire fulfilled is a tree of life. He who despises a word will bring destruction on himself, but he who respects a commandment will be rewarded. The teaching of the wise is a fountain of life in order to avoid the snares of death. Good sense grants favor, but the way of the faithless is coarse. Anyone who is clever will act with intelligence, but the fool will display folly. A messenger of wickedness will fall into trouble, but an envoy of the faithful brings healing. Poverty and disgrace belong to him who ignores instruction, but he who guards reproof will be honored. A desire fulfilled will be sweet to the soul, but an abomination of fools is turning from evil. This concludes the reading for day 148. Thank you for listening.
These daily readings are made possible by your generous support of the Global Outreach Ministry of Scott Purcell. To partner with us and enable this work and others like it, please visit huttobible.com/give and select Go Pastor Support from the fund list. You can also sign up for ministry updates at scott-purcell.epistle.org/subscribe. Both of those links can be found in the podcast description. Thank you for helping us share God's Word.